But to come to the question of Kashmir, it is absolutely the lifeblood of Pakistan. Pakistan cannot give up Kashmir or some kind of an arrangement with the people of Kashmir, because all of the rivers originate in Kashmir. Everything that Pakistan depends on, it's an agricultural country. It would actually be turned into a desert if India were to shut off the flow of rivers into Pakistan from Kashmir. So for Pakistan, Kashmir, it is its lifeblood. India, on the other hand, sees this as its hegemonic domination of the region. And if there were a war between India and Pakistan, and of course, in 1999, both India and Pakistan literally came to war over the Kargil operation, which was mercifully diffused in time. Otherwise, it would have escalated into a full-scale war. And given that both countries are nuclear armed, then I'm convinced, and I can tell you this, I'm not revealing any secrets. I've periodically talked to a number of senior generals in Pakistan, former as well as current. Some of them actually used to be my class fellows in Pakistan, and they are in very high positions. And they have said that in the event of a war with India, we know that in a conventional war, we cannot defeat India because of their numerical superiority, because of their vast numbers. And if they overwhelm our forces, we would be left with absolutely no choice but to use nuclear weapons. And you can imagine what would happen. When Pakistan uses nuclear weapons, it has an estimated 80 to 100 nuclear weapons. India probably has 200, but you don't need 100 or 200 nuclear bombs. You just need one to destroy that whole region. And that would be the end of that region as we know it. And so that's the catastrophe. And what I fear is that that's not going to be the end of it. This is not going to remain confined to India and Pakistan. China will jump into it. Afghanistan would get involved. Iran would get involved. America would get involved. And you would have a real mess in that area. And that's why it's extremely important that we become aware of the reality of Kashmir and the grave threat that its unsettled future poses to world peace. And I sincerely hope that those of us who are in the anti-war movement, in the Peace Alliance, those who care for peace and justice in the world, that we raise our voices in support of the people of Kashmir. I mean, what is it that they're asking for? They're asking for the right to self-determination. They're asking for holding a referendum. I mean, what can be more democratic than that? I mean, why is India, which prides itself on being the largest democracy in the world, refuses to allow the people of Kashmir the right to hold a vote? I mean, if the people of Kashmir want to be part of India, nobody can stop them from exercising that right. I mean, if India is a democracy, why is it that it denies that very democratic right to the people of Kashmir? So what this indicates is that Indian democracy is actually nothing but a hypocrisy. And I think we, as people that care for peace and justice, must raise our voices, join them with the people of Kashmir, and insist that they must get that right of self-determination, and let the chips fall where they may. If the people of Kashmir want to be part of Pakistan, that's their choice. If they want to be part of India, that's their choice. If they want to be independent, that's their choice. That's their choice. You must respect it. But at least give them that right. Why deny them that right? And why deny them that right at the point of the gun? Why do you have, you look at, you saw in this documentary, in Kashmir, in Srinagar, there are so many people have been killed that every neighborhood has its own graveyard because there are not enough spaces anywhere. In fact, open fields have become graveyards over there. Every street corner is a military bunker. Over there, there are three kinds of Indian forces over there out of the 700,000 that are there. There is the Indian Army, then there is the Indian Border Security Force, and the third, the most brutal, the ones that you saw beating up people, youngsters, 12, 13-year-old kids they were beating up. This is referred to as the Central Reserve Police Force. This force is made up entirely of Hindus. And those Hindus that are extremely prejudiced against Muslims, the fascist Hindus. I don't put all Hindus into that category. There are good Hindus. You saw Arundhati Roy, she's a Hindu person, but it's a very fair person. And there are a lot of people in India like that. Hindus, they're not Muslims. They feel that justice ought to be done. But the Central Reserve Police Force of India is the most brutal. That is the force that has committed the most egregious crimes against the Kashmiri people. And one final point, I think something that we really ought to take with us, and that is when you compare, for instance, the plight of the Palestinian people with that of the Kashmiri people. The Palestinian people are suffering tremendously at the hands of the Zionists. But I think even there, despite all of the brutality, you cannot say that the Zionists are guilty of perpetrating rape of the Palestinian women. Only and only in Kashmir, more than 10,000 Kashmiri women have been raped. You know, Amnesty International itself has documented, Indian human rights organizations have documented. These women range from the age of 7 to 70. 7-year-old girls have been raped by these beasts. This is the kind of shame and horrible things that are happening over there. And I urge you all, please, to join our brothers and sisters from Kashmir. Help them. You become their voices. Raise this voice with people that you know. We should urge the Canadian government, don't run after dollars. Let us uphold our values of peace and justice. Thank you very much, and may God bless you.
Sure. We could have all the speakers come up. Thank you so much, all of you, for the presentations. That was an incredible amount of history and present-day information packed in. We only have about 10 minutes until others will be joining us in this room, because we're meeting here to break into our regional and other caucuses for the Canadian Peace Alliance. So we're going to have a real limited Q&A, but just, speaking for the new steering committee that we're going to come out of this weekend with for the Canadian Peace Alliance, we're really committed to doing work with the Friends of Kashmir. And if there's a day of action that is important to you, we'll really do our best to make sure that right across Canada, peace organizations are supporting you, are having actions outside the Indian consulate, or whatever actions you choose to undertake to raise awareness of this occupation. So, I was just thinking in Zafar's presentation about all the borders that imperialists past and present draw in the world. And the other one that's so important in that region is the ridiculous Durand line that the British drew, that is, the border of Pakistan and Afghanistan today. And they're always lecturing Pakistan about, you must control your border, you must control your border. Well, this was an artificial border created by the British, by the imperialists, that divides the tribes and the different peoples of that area. The peoples there don't recognize that line. So the US and others always lecturing Pakistan to protect your border. Well, at the same time, without asking anyone's permission, the US is sending special ops in to murder people in Pakistan, sending unmanned drones over the border, unmanned drones patrolling the skies of Pakistan without any permission. So just the hypocrisy, right, of the lines they draw, the troubles those lines cause the people who live in those regions. And then whenever they want to go anywhere, they respect no borders, and they arrogate to themselves the right to go in anywhere. So that's really feeling a sense of urgency after the presentations. Again, sorry, we'll have time for maybe 2-3 questions, and then let the speakers respond. So we'll just take a few questions all at once to conserve time here. Questions or brief comments? Laura, go ahead.
Thank you very much for the information. There's been a lack of information on this topic. You're right. It's
barriers to self-determination is obvious, and thank you for.
Thanks for that. Maybe one more question or comment? Right there.
Well, we had several very good questions. You see, the question of turning a people's movement and branding it as terrorism is a very old ploy. I like to use an old cliche. They say one man's terrorist is another's freedom fighter. But I think really what it is that the US and its allies determine who is to be called a freedom fighter and who is to be branded a terrorist. So anybody who opposes Western imperialism automatically is a terrorist. That's a very simple, straightforward definition that they apply to these things. To give you a very simple example, look at Afghanistan. When the Soviets invaded Afghanistan and the Afghans stood up against the Soviet army, then these people were called freedom fighters. In fact, Reagan invited the very same leaders today that are referred to as terrorists in Afghanistan to the White House, and he spoke about them as being the modern equivalent of the founding fathers of the United States. I mean, they had right in the White House lawn. The same people that he praised in 1985, May of 1985, then 5 years, 6 years later, the same people became terrorists. So basically, anywhere that the US imperialists or Western imperialism opposes, then those people are terrorists. If they advance Western imperialist agenda, then they are freedom fighters. So the same, unfortunately, applies to the people of Kashmir, because their struggle does not advance Western imperialist agenda, therefore they are branded as terrorists. Whereas, as you can see, all they're doing is throwing stones at armed thugs over there. People who are beating them, people who are killing them, people who are raping their women. These are kids that are throwing stones. What are they supposed to do? When people get fed up of their oppression, they have to react in some ways, and that's all that the people of Kashmir are doing. So we should constantly emphasize the point that it is their right, what they are asking for, that they have the right to have self-determination, that no amount of propaganda is going to turn them into terrorists, that they have a legitimate struggle, and that it is also enshrined in the Security Council resolutions. In that sense, it actually even enhances their right. And so we should constantly raise our voice against the hypocrisy that is prevalent in the media discourse as well as in the Western imperialist discourse. And we in the peace movement ought to be very clear about this and keep on emphasizing this point. So that's the point with respect to terror.
His occupation of Kashmir fuels so much of the instability in both Pakistan and Afghanistan. So we've really come to see Kashmir as one bookend on a whole region under a war and occupation. If you think of all the way from Palestine to Kashmir, you have this whole region that in 1947 was partitioned basically by the British, or the remnants of British imperialism, and so many problems and so many wars and occupations now led by US imperialism. And of all of those situations, unfortunately in the Canadian media, Kashmir is the one we hear the least about. Even though the Canadian government increasingly has close ties with India, business ties, political ties, and now some military connections as well with India, our media here pays almost no attention to the hundreds of thousands of troops occupying Kashmir. So we're very delighted and happy that at this convention of the Canadian Peace Alliance, we've heard from the Friends of Kashmir, and Friends of Kashmir Canada has actually joined with the Canadian Peace Alliance and will now be a member group, and we look forward to working more together. We have a lot of work to do. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of television coverage of Kashmir in Canada, and so we want to do what we can to make sure this issue is addressed. Because I think when the Canadian public knows about what India is doing in Kashmir, they'll take action, and they'll demand that Canada not just view India as a business partner or as a place to sell products, but as a country that needs to be held accountable like any other country. So we'll be bringing this issue to the Harper government for sure.
I think this was a very important meeting in the sense that the issue of Kashmir was brought to the attention of the mainstream Canadian community, and we had a number of delegates from the Canadian Peace Alliance from different parts of Canada, as well as members of the Toronto Coalition to Stop the War. That includes a lot of activists from universities, from the labor movement and other movements in Canada, and bringing the issue of Kashmir to their attention definitely was a major achievement of the Friends of Kashmir, and they ought to be congratulated for their efforts.
Hi, my name's Sid Lacombe, and I'm the National Coordinator of the Canadian Peace Alliance. We're incredibly happy to have Friends of Kashmir join us here at our convention, and we are going to be standing up with the Friends of Kashmir and calling for self-determination for the people of Kashmir.
I got stuff on here. Peace! Wait,